What's up, man?
Hey, Graylin. Good to
Well,
see you.
guys, I know, man. This is probably a shock to our viewers today, but you get a little bit of both of us today. So, man, how are
That's
things in
right.
Austin? How are things in
Here we
Austin
are.
today?
Oh, man, they are. It's almost like perfection. It's sunny, warm. I think it's a good old summer day in Austin. Feeling good up here. How about you in San Antonio?
Man, same. It's a little overcast, which is a good thing in the middle of July. So, man, it's been a good day so far. Got out and spent some time with the fam this morning, and man, looking forward to a line online right
Yeah,
now. So
absolutely.
I think we're probably still waiting for some folks to come in. So, man, yeah.
Well, it's been today. I kicked off the day this morning with a good old walk of the dogs. We're dog sitting. We have one, and we're dog sitting another. So kicked the day off with that. It was a nice intro to the day.
I,
And
I I love your dog's name, Winston. He's awesome.
Winston,
Yeah.
the newest addition to the family. That's right. So it's good. It's actually getting me out every day. So
Yeah.
that's been a nice adjustment. When you're trying to incorporate new disciplines or get yourself motivated to get outside more, especially in quarantine and stuff, I highly recommend just getting yourself a dog because they require being walked every day, and then you just slowly just adapt to their schedule, and it just starts to fit into your normal
Yeah.
routine. So
Becomes a
love
habit.
it.
That's so cool. My daughter's, 4 years old. And so we're at the point now where any dog she sees is her dog. So like we come home and she talks about that dog that she just interacted with like it's hers. So me and my wife are kind of like, oh, we're gonna have to break down and get a puppy eventually, man. So
Oh
it's
man,
so cool.
slippery slope. It's slippery slope.
Well, cool,
All
man.
right.
I think we still got folks coming in, man, but I'm really excited about today. For those of you who don't know who we are, I'll introduce myself. My name is Graylin Griffin. I'm one of the area directors with Alignment Leadership. And what that means is I get to work and build, this movement of leadership in the city of San Antonio. But then I also work really closely with our headquarters and our team in Austin. And so I'm excited to be here today, man, and to be
That's right.
joined by my friend. So tell them about yourself.
Hey, hey, I'm Josh, the director of operations of the team here, and I'm mostly headquartered here in Austin and helping to just keep the daily work flowing with the team here, keeping things moving. So love working with this team and just meeting new people, growing our community around alignment leadership, and here on Align Online as well. So yeah, super pumped for today. And super pumped to follow
Yeah.
up on last week because last week's conversation I was
Yeah.
tuned in from my vacation spot in Minnesota, but man, last week's conversation was uh, was fire. It was just so good. It had me thinking a lot, especially as I was traveling. The
Hmm.
conversation revolved around thinking just about others,
Right.
tuning into like what their needs and paying attention to who that is. I mean, I'm there at a family reunion. We're crossing state lines, and
Yes.
it was the perfect timing to be just sitting there and had me reflecting on a lot. But I just loved that. I love the
Oh
conversation from
man.
last week, and I just feel like today, our conversation that you and I are gonna just kind of muse over today is going to be a really great follow up to that. So,
Well, it was awesome to be a part of it. And the cool thing about these environments is that we have some ideas of like things we can talk about, but the conversation took such an organic direction, man, and
yeah,
really just developed into this like really life-giving experience, I think, for both of us. And Jennifer Mazzola, she is one of the leaders at ABBA in Austin. So if you're in the Austin area looking to connect with other leaders of like mind, connect with ABBA. And one way you can do that, one of the cool things coming up actually in August, the 6th and the 7th, is the Global Leadership Summit. And Alignment Leadership is the title sponsor for that this year. I mean, I'm telling you what, I've never been to the one in Austin, but I've seen the lineup. I've heard about this for a while. Josh actually went last year, and I
mm-hmm.
know it is an incredible experience. This year there will be 2 experiences, but the first one is happening in August. Just with everything happening, we have to make some pivots with shelter in place and COVID and all of those recommendations and parameters. But man, if you have not gotten your ticket, we encourage you. If you're in the Austin area, you want to connect. The GLS Global Leadership Summit is somewhere that you want to be a part of, and it will enrich your leadership skill set, your toolbox, and you'll leave incredibly empowered and inspired. So
that's right. I came away from last year's experience with like pages of notes. I couldn't keep up. It just felt like every single sentence out of these speakers' mouths was just like something profound that was like, oh my gosh, like I had spent weeks just like referring back to those notes over and over again. And so it's worth it. It's definitely worth it.
For sure, man. Well, we're really excited again as people continue to come in to have you with us this afternoon on Align Online. And like we said, it's a little bit different. You get both of us from the team, and really, I'm just excited to introduce what we're going to be talking about today. And Josh he's gonna lay the foundation for us, and we're going to jump into this. So we encourage you guys to interact with us in the comments, ask questions, share a comment or a thought if something resonates with you. But yeah, Josh, what do we got on the ticket for today, man?
All right. Well, today, Graylin, I wanted to muse with you about one of our foundations of leadership. So here at Alignment Leadership, we've got 4 foundations to leadership, and it's these 4 things that really inform the way that we approach the topic of leadership in all things. Those 4 foundations are: anyone can lead and should lead. Secondly, everyone has intrinsic value. Thirdly, that leadership in its basic definition for us is loving and serving others toward fulfillment. And the 4th foundation for us is that authentic community, surrounding yourself with authentic community, overcomes isolation and regret. And these 4 foundations have been really the pillars to what we've discovered to be what helps us be successful in our own transformation as leaders. So today we just wanted to pick one. And we're gonna dive into that. So we're gonna start with anyone can lead and should lead as our first foundational principle that we're gonna talk about today. So I just wanted to kick it off here, Graylin. I'm gonna pop a question at you here.
Okay.
I want you to think back, and I know that I just like doing this to you because I just like doing this to you.
Wow.
We didn't talk about this in the preparation before we went live, which is I just like to do this to you.
Okay.
So my question for you is to like if you were to think back to like what was your first conceptualization of the word leadership? Was it a person? Was it a role? Was it yourself? Was it someone else? When do you remember first thinking about this word leadership and what was happening in that scene?
That's a great question, man. I always, up into like probably my teenage years, leadership was something that seemed kind of like in the distance, as not really involving me, whether it was with a teacher or a pastor or someone who fit the at that time definition of leader in my mind, which is someone in a suit leading a team of people with some sort of authority. It wasn't until I was like probably a teenager when in a youth group at a really strong student ministry that I was a part of, and a youth pastor that just at that time really encouraged every one of us to think of ourselves as leaders, and he began to give us responsibility. So that's when there was kind of a shift where leadership was no longer this far off concept or idea embodied by someone other than me, to where I was like given permission to kind of think about like myself in that capacity. And as like a 15-year-old kid, responsible for, I don't know, calling people for pizza night, I felt like,
Yeah.
hey, I got a little responsibility. So, um,
That's kind of a big responsibility
I'm telling you, man,
in the youth
because
group. You don't want to get that one wrong.
you know what? Nobody shows up. We have all this extra pizza, so and that's the pressures of leadership. I'm just kidding. But yeah, that was like when I was experienced leadership, for myself. Like one, leadership doesn't have to be so far beyond me. It could be me, and I was given responsibility and kind of began to see and develop my understanding of leadership, and that was like aside from professional, but just like the concepts, the ideas of leadership. So man, I'm going to ask you the same question, Josh. Tell me about when did you first experience
um,
that? When did it look? What did it look like? And kind of,
yeah. I was thinking about this unfair advantage. I think this is just thoughts I've been processing the last like 24 hours as I've been anticipating stepping into this time today. But I mean, I grew up, I think, watching my parents as leaders. Both hearing about like my mom was a working mom as a kid, so hearing about stories when she'd come back from the office, just talking about whatever meetings or whatever. Grew up watching my dad in a pastoral ministry role, so seeing him every single Sunday at the front. So I think I had an early conception of leadership as the person in the front, or the person who facilitates a meeting of some kind, who's somehow the center of attention and the one talking. I think it was kind of an early conception of mine. And then I was also thinking back to like even just silly like playground games like follow the leader, where you kids get in a line and the kid at the front maybe walks funny or does some sort of like movement and everyone has to mimic and follow.
yeah.
And I was even thinking about that as like these early conceptions of leadership as like the one in front, the one demonstrating something, and everyone's supposed to copy or follow. And I was thinking about that, and about even this our foundational principle of anyone can lead and should lead, and just how I think there's misconceptions, I think, for all of us in what leadership is and what it's supposed to look like. And I think majority of people probably discredit themselves or remove themselves from the possibility of being considered a leader or considered for leadership just because of I think just misconceptions that are ingrained in us from how we're, what we observe and experience growing up.
Yeah.
So I love this principle, and I love that we're starting on this one. So,
Man, I think that's so cool. And as we continue to transition to maybe unpacking this definition a little bit further, one thing that you said to me, or you just mentioned, that made me think of this was like when we were kids and there was follow the leader or there was a line leader. It was something that was desirable. Like everybody
yeah.
wanted that role,
Oh yeah.
and it was like we were fighting for, we were raising hands. We were the quietest because we wanted the position of leader, or in the game, follow the leader. And I think, as we continue to talk about this and unpack this, like there has been like a shift. I think I experienced it myself where leadership wasn't as appealing to me, because of, how I viewed myself, or, maybe things I saw modeled in leadership. But like, I feel like this definition and this particular foundation in alignment leadership, is going to hopefully begin to, recreate, an image and the desire to step into the leadership role. So if you would, like, what's the definition? When we say everyone can lead and should lead, what are some things that like make this up?
Well, let me I won't spout off a definition, but some things that I've that we talk about a lot in our amongst our team and amongst our alignment leadership team, as we're even prepping for events and formulating resources and things like that, is just the concept that I guess that leadership can be learned. So I remember when you and I, it was like, I mean, we're talking like more than a year ago now, I guess. Wow. When we were doing the Leadership Academy, when we first kind of launched that, do you remember like talking with people about this idea that leadership isn't a trait that it's not a DNA. It's
Right.
not something that there's no trait like, blonde hair or red hair. It's not something you're born with.
Right.
It's something that is actually a skill that can be learned. It's something that can be exercised. It can be improved. Yeah. So anyone can lead, for me, is a starting point, because it begins by saying you're not born a leader. You might be born. There's certain personality traits that maybe we have categorized as more like, oh, that's a natural born leader. Maybe someone who's more animated or charismatic, or maybe even domineering, or maybe they're just incredibly organized and they seem confident talking in front of people.
Right.
And we tend to naturally put them into leadership roles, right? And so maybe we can say, yeah, there's certain personality traits and things like that maybe societally we kind of gravitate more toward and say, oh yeah, that's a leader. But there is no actual trait of leader. So we come from the standpoint in alignment leadership, what we process all the time is that leadership is really just, it's actually something that you learn. You can learn. Anyone can learn it. And you're not disqualified because of your personality. So if you are an introvert, great. Then lead like an introvert. If you're an extrovert, lead like an whatever. It doesn't matter how you're wired or who you are. Lead in the way that you were meant to lead. And there is no cookie cutter to this word. So at least I wanted to start by saying that.
No, that's so good.
Yeah.
That's so good. I think back to like when that clicked, when this understanding, like, because we do hear it a lot within our culture, even in schools, like, working in education, like they're born leaders, like, they're this and that. And it's kind of one of these things that I think can disqualify a lot of people, because in their heads, they're walking into this thinking, oh, well, that's not me,
Yeah.
And I do remember kind of like that aha, like, hey, I have gifts, and because I have gifts, and I can learn to develop these things. It's like flexing, or working a muscle out. Like, I can become a better leader. I can can leverage my influence or my gifts, man. And that's one of those powerful, like, aha moments where there's like a paradigm shift, and it's pretty amazing. Like, what was in a moment that you experienced, the truth of this principle, like we've been talking about it, and we've lived out, within alignment leadership. What can you think back or reflect on a time when it just clicked? It was like, you know what? I can grow into this, or
well, I think I had I remember as a young teenager, like middle school age, having a couple teachers, one in particular who I wasn't in choir, but she was the choir teacher at the time, who was like recruiting me to join choir. And she saw something in me and always pushed me to be like a better influence on my peers. And I'm not exactly sure back then. I mean, I was, I was a typical, I don't know, typical middle school boy. So, I mean, I probably couldn't sit still longer than 15 seconds, could care less about deep conversations, really probably only cared about girls and who knows, and not doing homework on time.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's just like, I don't know how she saw something in me, but it was something about influence. So I remember early on being like, man, I keep getting pulled aside and, getting a talking to, by this teacher and another one. And every time that happened, I kept remembering, okay, they're asking me, I can tell they're trying to get me to influence my peers and, do something different. And so there was something started to click in me that, like, because at that point I was like, I didn't see myself as a leader. That was not my radar. I'm not thinking about anything like that at that age, but you start to, like, it started to click for me that maybe they keep calling me a leader, or that they keep saying you can be a leader. They just kept reinforcing this, like, these thoughts, and I could tell they were trying to like get me to do something different and like use my influence somehow to impact my peers. And it was like, huh. So I think that's for me early on
Hmm.
in experience was something along those lines where I began to kind of think, okay, maybe there is like some good here. Maybe I can be a positive influence, you know? And so I think at its basic form, I at least latched on to maybe leadership is at least some sort of positive influence on others.
Yeah. And that's great. It's amazing. We can kind of trace those steps back to like when we have this realization that I, can lead, or I have influence.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the things that, that I love about this particular foundation is like, it's not only like not that only every person can lead, is there's like this expectation that you should lead. Like, and so
Yeah.
I know that's kind of that's a weighty ideal for those of us who maybe don't see ourselves.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. Like, what is that? Why do we think that? Like, what does that come from? So that's kind
Yeah.
of a rhetorical question, but I just for dialogue's sake, let's talk about it, man. I love that.
Yeah. Should is it's a strong word.
Yeah.
And I usually in my life try to avoid should statements just
Hmm.
because I feel like should is often associated with some sort of like negative,
Right.
uh, you know,
Authority or directive
yeah,
or
like
something like
I
that.
didn't
Yeah.
do something right. I should have done it differently. Or, yeah, or like just, yeah. So anyone can lead and should lead. So that is for us connected to, and some of these principles, these foundations we have really like are interconnected. And
Right.
they're, they're, they relate to one another. But, um, even using my own story, the greater understanding I have of like my potential and the greater understanding I have of realizing like, oh my gosh, there's more than just me on this planet. There's others around me, and I can now have a positive influence on them. The more and more I have a greater revelation as to how I'm uniquely wired, and some of my unique maybe traits and giftings, passions, talents, and the more I understand that and how those can be used to um, to to bless others, to be a positive influence on others, I think the more there is some sort of sense of in a I mean this in all the right ways, a good way, but there's some sort of obligation there to do something good with it.
Right.
You know,
Right.
it's like um, yeah, I suppose it versus I guess the complete opposite side would be like some sort of hoarding mentality, you know,
Hmm.
like, oh, I've just realized how many good things I have, and I'm just going to keep them to myself. And I think sometimes that's what it looks like from the outside. And sometimes I think that can just be as a result of insecurities. So when we talked about anyone can lead, I think we're referencing like sometimes in our own journey, we have to come out of this insecurity of like, well, no, I'm not the leader. I can't lead like that. I can't do that. And that's an insecurity. And
Right.
so we've got to sometimes our lack of initiative or, you know, using our gifts to, you know, be a positive influencer to bless others is a result of these insecurities we're still working through. Um,
Yeah,
but
man.
other times it's just I think sometimes even just a lack of like just connecting the dots. I think that's what it was for me. It just, for a
Right.
long time was just like not connecting the dots that like, oh my gosh, like I've got these unique cool things about who I am, and I certainly look at others and say they've got things that are unique to them that are also really valuable and cool. You know, why not use how
Yeah.
I've been wired for others, you know?
Yeah, and we were kind of talking about this, backstage before we came in here. Like I think each leader, each individual, kind of goes on this, you know, journey of self discovery of like their worth and their value. And then when you become like aware, or you accept that, how I'm made as an individual, how my intrinsic value
Mm.
is all that matters. It's kind of like, man, I now want to share that with someone else. And I love that you said it's kind of connecting the dots. So
Yeah.
again, the foundations of these, that we're discovering are just discussing, is just everyone can and should lead. Leadership is loving and serving others towards fulfillment. Everyone has intrinsic value.
Yeah.
And then authentic community overcomes isolation and regret. And as you begin to think about these, as you begin to understand and make a connection with these foundations, these principles, man, it's like it kind of comes full circle. It's like, man, now that I've discovered this, now that I've seen the power in this, I want to see that lived out and experienced by someone else. And it's kind of like, now I have the privilege of doing that in
Yeah.
for someone else. And so
Yeah,
I
and I think
love
that's
that.
the mindset shift. It shifts to like more of this is an opportunity for me versus an obligation, or
Hmm.
this is actually a privilege for me to go take this same revelation I have and share that with others. Because I think you and I saw this a lot when we were leading the academy. We went through that process of like sitting down with everybody one on one beforehand, kind of interviewing them, kind of feeling out like, hey, how interested really are they in this academy?
Yeah.
You know, especially as it was like an internal program we were doing in the company. It was kind of like we want to make sure that people aren't just going along to because they think they have to, like they got to want this, right? And remember when we
Right.
were kind of like let's feel this
Well,
out because let's
it
see what they.
reminds me of what you said earlier. It's like we were pursuing people that we saw something in, that
Yes.
whether they had experienced it or not, we're like, man, this person is leading and they don't even realize they're leading. So that was kind of like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it's
Exactly.
kind of like an invitation, but also just like, you want this. And so it was like some people didn't even realize that they were living out leadership. So yes. So go ahead. I'm sorry to
It's
interrupt
no
you.
exactly, but that's perfect. And that's exactly what I'm getting at is like you and I think personally in our lives had already been through that experience where we had mentors, influencers, people who really really invested a lot into us to try to draw us out and draw out our potential as leaders, right?
Right. Right.
And we had been through our own process in our lives of pretty significant transformation. Like as you and I shared life stories and
Hmm.
connected in that way, we both realized we've had some pretty significant moments of transformation of our character in our lives. And out of that, there's that sense of like privilege and opportunity to like try to influence others in the same way. And so then we're trying to recruit people to this academy who we see as like, man, these people are just incredible people. They're leading, they don't even know it. And I don't know if you remember, but sometimes in those interview questions or process, as we're just getting to know people, some people were like, not they weren't like opposed to joining the leadership academy, but there was that mindset of like I don't really see myself as a leader,
Yeah.
and what will it mean if I go through this? What
Right.
kind of
Right.
obligation will there be? What is you could tell there was like these concepts of leadership that we're coming at it from this standpoint, like these four foundations, and we're like, no, like it's it's not, it may not be what you think it is, and
Right.
you're trying to draw people into this experience, and trying to like shed and break off certain mentalities of leadership that they might have entering into it. But I just remember that those conversations being so even uh, really eye opening to me of like, wow, I think um, yeah, not everyone sees like that anyone can lead. Not everyone really believes that yet. And so I think that was like the beginning of the academy, which is kind of talking through this concept of like, hey, you you are a leader, and you start believing that, and you'll see it. You'll see a change. It doesn't mean you have to be the person in the front. It doesn't mean you
Right.
have to be the one in charge. You don't even have to like expect or assume that you'll be put into a position of management after this academy. Remember that? Where like some people
Oh
are like,
yeah.
I don't want to be a
Yes.
manager. We're like,
I don't,
no, no,
I,
no. Management and leadership
oh
not the same
yes.
thing. Like we just want you to discover how incredibly unique you are,
Right.
and start to see how there's actually a deep sense of fulfillment for you when you begin to take those things that you've discovered about yourself and use it to love and serve other people.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I think one of my favorite things about the role that we've been in for the past couple years is when someone has that realization. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, one, there's a realization that I can lead because of my my individual gifts and my intrinsic value. And two, I can call that out. I can speak to that in someone else. And
Yeah.
I think that has been some of the most fulfilling moments in my professional career.
Mm.
And just with working with people, it's like seeing them kind of live that out with someone else, and beyond credential, beyond tenure, beyond personality, but just to see, just someone's value and say, man, you've got something that this world needs.
Yeah.
You've got something that this world needs, and you can make an influence, you can make an impact in this environment. And I think this is, it can seem kind of unique, because this foundation or this principle isn't always lived out in the workplace.
Mm.
So a question I have for you, Josh, is like, um, thinking about the impact of like fully living this principle out in a work environment. What are some of the things that you've either witnessed or experienced, or encourage people as we continue to kind of think through this and figure out how we can apply this to, the
Yeah.
environments that we lead?
That's a really good question. I think when we, so if I connect it to one of our other foundations, that in its basic form, leadership is loving and serving others toward fulfillment, then that right there, I think it starts to actually make every single moment you're around people an opportunity to lead. So in a work setting, it could be, I feel like there's moments where I've noticed something about someone on a particular day. Maybe they usually show up to work in this sort of way, and this one day they show up, there's just something there, and it's like it's the conversation that's like when you get a moment to be aside, or um, when you get a moment around in a break room or water cooler or something, to just point out what you noticed as like in a sensitive way, and just break into initiate a conversation that like you kind of sense they might actually be wanting to have, but it's just, I don't know, you might notice they're just carrying something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's just like you just give them a moment to be heard, to just like express that, or just to feel noticed by someone. I think that right there is like is one opportunity. I think there's ways that we can sponsor other people, other teammates, when we know their passions, when we know their talents. You and I have been on a team. We've been working together for a couple of years now, and our team has, changed. We've had people
Sure.
in and out. We've been in different makeups of teams, and different people throughout the years. And with each person, that comes in, you do your best to create a role for them, and to kind of set them off in this journey of like, hey, here's some worthwhile, meaningful work. It's a role for you that you're going to be great at. Go for it. But
Mm-hmm.
even with that, it's not like, especially when you're just getting to know someone, it's not like you can perfectly create a role that is going to like tick every single box in them beneath the surface of like, this is every single passion, talent,
Yeah.
deep hope, long-term thing I've ever been wanting ever in a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's these hidden talents and abilities in people, and I think as teammates we sometimes get to know those things about people. We become aware of those things, and I think one way we can use this principle in a work setting is to sponsor other people to greater opportunities. So it might be speaking up on another person's behalf and saying, oh, there's a particular task or thing that needs done. Maybe we should consider so and so, like he or she like has, they love doing that. They
Yeah.
I've heard them express an interest in that. Or did you know that in their personal time they do that kind of thing all the time? I mean, I think we've had a lot of moments like that where we've like, you know what I mean, where we've had like things we've discovered about people where we've been like,
Yes.
what,
You do
you
that.
know you've got this thing on the side, you got this side hustle, you got that talent, like what in the world, like can we tap into that here here in our work setting? So I think that's one way. I think it's just like initiating conversations with people, taking a conversation deeper than like the weather and
Yeah.
sports, or going deeper into like things where there's actual heart connection. And
Yeah.
then I think secondly, it's just like just be aware of people's talents and passions are, and just, you know, speak up, try to, wherever you can, you know, create opportunity for them to kind of contribute. And I think, and maybe that's even allowing them to, if they're interested, to contribute to what you're doing, and,
Yeah. That's
not
great,
feeling
man.
like you gotta protect your work or your role for your own, you know, your own self-worth or something, but opening it up for others to say, hey, if you're interested in doing this, let's learn it together, let's do it together. um,
Yeah. I love
what
that.
what comes to your mind?
You know, I was thinking about that, and as you kind of providing some opportunities, I was thinking, man, this can look like so many different things. Because it's really just based on, drawing things out. That everyone has value already, and
Mhm.
whether I'm in a position of leadership or not, and that's thing, just by title or role, within my company. Um, because the way we define leadership is loving and serving someone else towards fulfillment, man, it can happen at the water cooler. It can happen over a cup of coffee, and it will happen intentionally. And I
Yeah,
love that you said just kind of taking the time to get to know someone else, because then you're beginning to hear about some of the things they're passionate about. You're getting
yeah,
to, discover these this value that's already there. You're being introduced to it.
yeah,
And I think that is really an incredible opportunity. I love the term, and we need to probably hashtag this, but sponsoring someone else. I
Mhm.
love that idea of
Yes.
sponsoring someone in leadership, and I think it can show up, um, in in an environment. And we talk about, collaborating and fighting for the best idea
Yeah,
oftentimes, but like knowing the individuals in the room with you and the incredible ideas that they have, but maybe the reluctance they may have to share it,
yeah,
or because of whatever they're bringing into this environment, and drawing it out, like
yeah,
pausing for a second to say, hey, what do you
uh,
think? You know what I mean? Just in that one moment, I think that, gives permission for someone, to share, their creativity, but then
yeah,
also, it's empowering, it's affirming to say, as I'm on this journey of understanding that I have intrinsic value and that I can lead, someone is recognizing that and now giving me an opportunity. And I
yeah.
think that is like looking for those opportunities are, you know, where I feel that we can live this out in a professional environment, because I think a lot of times the best ideas are often unsaid. And if we don't, and
Yeah,
this is where we talk
that's
a lot
so
about
true.
culture, you know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
where you want to kind of shift the culture, and draw out some of those ideas that could, move the purpose forward.
Mhm.
That's one way I can think about it, man.
That's good. Yeah, I think that, yeah, some of the best ideas are left unsaid, and I think some of the best potential and talent is just unnoticed, just because
Hmm.
no one's talking about it. I think we just get really task oriented or task driven, and just focused on, getting stuff done, and forget about just the incredible potential around us. So I think that's one way we can do that. It's just having that understanding, that foundational principle of anyone can lead, and nearly every single moment and every single day is an opportunity to to lead.
Right.
Um, so, quick recap: anyone can lead. So it's not a trait you're born with.
Right.
It's something that can be learned. Right? Leadership can be learned. It's connected to this revelation of like who you are, how you're uniquely wired and gifted, and your unique abilities, your personality traits, all these things that are like can be leveraged for good, right?
Yep. Yep.
And yeah, and the mindset shift to like it's a privilege or it's an opportunity, versus like uh, versus
And like an
feeling.
obligation or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, man.
Mhm.
And I know, like, for those of you who are listening, if you have questions, we encourage you to, or an idea, something that resonates with you, feel free to drop it in the comments or the chat, and we can talk to that. But I know this is unfamiliar for a lot of like professional environments. This
Mhm.
way of thinking, it is countercultural, and that's what we're here for. Alignment leadership,
Mhm.
is all about redefining, what it means to lead, redefining, leadership. And so it is possible. It does take work, but you have a team of people, at Alignment Leadership who are more than willing, to come alongside you as you want to create and transform the environment that you influence. So
Yeah.
reach out to us if you have a friend or you're a part of an organization that believes this and wants to see that change, man. Let us know. We'd love to continue discussing this with you. So
That's right.
I'm just gonna look in here. I'm not sure if we have any comments or questions yet, but man, I've really enjoyed this time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to
and stick around for the next couple of weeks. We're going to be taking a foundation of leadership that we have here and just unpacking that, discussing that. So so stick around with us every week, every Tuesday here as we continue to unpack this. Another thing, actually, I was going to see if our producer Zach throw that GLS picture back up there. Let's just just want to point people to that again here as we end our time, just to keep in mind that there's just that incredible opportunity coming up in just a few weeks. Get your tickets, and you won't regret it.
right.
Share the link with others, and I'm looking forward to, after that event, just the feedback from our community here and discussing what we our takeaways too. So
For sure.
yeah.
Well,
All
man,
right.
dude, I'm looking forward to next week. This was a lot of fun.
This was good. It was good to see you. I wish we could muse in person.
I know. Soon enough.
Soon enough.
Well,
all right. Well, thanks everyone, and see you next Tuesday.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye, Graylin. Bye, everyone.
See you, Josh.